story by Mythic Tales of Africa. Still hear the screams sometimes. They echo in my head, sharp and raw, like they're happening all over again. It was the night Mama Ebele's house went silent, too silent. Mama Ebele was the old woman who lived at the edge of our village in Enugu. Everyone knew her, but no one really knew her. She was always there, sitting on her wooden stool under the mango tree, her eyes following you like she could see right through your skin. Kids whispered about her, saying she was a witch. Adults laughed it off, but they never stayed too long near her house after dark. That night, I was walking back from my uncle's house. The moon was high, casting long shadows on the dirt road. I passed Mama Ebele's house, and that's when I heard it, a low, guttural sound like an animal growling. Then came the scream. It wasn't just a scream, it was a sound that made my stomach twist. It was pain, fear, and something else I couldn't name. I froze. My feet felt like they were stuck in the mud. The scream stopped as suddenly as it started, and the silence that followed was worse. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then I saw her. Mama Ebele stepped out of her house, her white wrapper stained dark. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought she smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was something cold, something that made my chest tighten. I don't know why I didn't run. My legs felt heavy, rooted to the dirt. Mama Ebele stared at me, and the air between us seemed to thicken, pulling me toward her house. Her stained wrapper swayed as she moved back inside, the door creaking open like it was warning me to stay away. But I couldn't. The scream I'd heard still rang in my ears, and something deep in my chest told me I needed to know. So I followed her. The path to her door was narrow, overgrown with weeds that tugged at my ankles. The house smelled like burnt wood and something sour. The dim light of an oil lamp flickered inside, casting strange shadows on the walls. I stepped in. My heart beat so loud I thought she might hear it. She was sitting at the far end of the room, hunched over something on the floor. At first, I couldn't tell what it was, just a pile of cloth. Then I saw it, a hand, small, lifeless, sticking out from under the fabric. My stomach turned, and I clamped my hand over my mouth to stop the gasp that was threatening to escape. Mama Ebele didn't look up, but she spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried weight, like every word was dragging something behind it. I tried to back away, but the floor creaked under my foot and she turned to face me. Her eyes were darker than I remembered, almost black. Her mouth twisted into that same cold, not quite smile I'd seen before. "You think you're brave?" she said. "You're not." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt dry. My legs like they were sinking into the earth beneath me. The pile on the floor shifted slightly, and I realized it wasn't cloth. It was a bundle of bodies, small, twisted, lifeless bodies. My chest tightened as I counted them. Four children. "They were mine," she said, her voice hollow. "I love them, but love doesn't keep you alive." I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but something in her eyes held me there, pinned me to the spot like I was nothing more than a shadow on the wall. Her words hung in the air, heavy and sharp, like they could cut through the silence. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes were fixed on the pile of small bodies on the floor. I wanted to look away, but it was like they had a hold on me, like they were pulling me into their stillness. Mama Ebele stood slowly, her thin frame casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. She stepped closer to me, her bare feet making no sound on the wooden floor. "Do you know what it feels like?" she said, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves, "to watch your own life slip away, to feel it draining from your bones, leaving you hollow?" I shook my head, though I wasn't sure if she was looking for an answer. Her eyes, dark and endless, seemed to swallow the dim light of the room. "You won't understand," she said, almost to herself. "Not yet." I found my voice, though it came out in a shaky whisper. "Why? Why did you do it?" Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. Anger, maybe, or sadness. Do you think this world is kind? She asked, her tone sharper now. Do you think it cares whether you live or die? My children, they were my heart, my blood. But love doesn't feed you. Love doesn't keep you warm when death comes knocking. Her words chilled me, but it was the way she said them, like she believed them, like they were as real as the ground beneath her feet, that made my skin crawl. She took another step toward me, and I felt the urge to back away, but my feet wouldn't obey. They gave me their lives, she continued, her voice quieter now, almost gentle. Not because I forced them, but because they loved me. They wanted me to live. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's that's not love, I said, my voice trembling. That's She cut me off with a wave of her hand. You don't understand, she said. You're young. You think life is endless, that you can waste it like water from a broken pot. But when you're old, when you feel the cold creeping into your bones, you'll see. The shadows in the room seem to grow darker, deeper. I wanted to leave, to run far away and never look back, but something in her eyes held me there, rooted to the spot. You're afraid, she said, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Good. Fear keeps you alive, but it won't save you when your time comes. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything to break the spell she seemed to have over me. But I just stood there, frozen, as she reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. It was cold, colder than anything I'd ever felt. Her grip was strong, almost painful, and I felt a strange sensation, like something was being pulled from inside me. You'll see, she whispered. One day, you'll see. Her hand dropped from my shoulder, and I stumbled back, gasping as the cold seemed to leave my chest. I didn't know what she had done to me, but I felt wrong, like a thread had been pulled loose inside me, and now everything was unraveling. Mama Ebele turned away, her gaze falling on the lifeless forms of the children at her feet. You think this is a curse, she said, her voice soft. But it's not. It's survival. This is the way things have always been. She knelt down, her hands brushing gently over the small bodies as if she was tucking them in for the night. In my grandmother's time, they called it the Ogbanje. Children cursed to die young, their souls twisted by spirits who wouldn't let them stay. But that's not what this is. I didn't want to hear anymore. My legs finally obeyed me, and I turned to run, but her voice stopped me cold. If you leave now, she said, you'll never understand. I didn't want to understand. I wanted to forget. But something in her tone, the weight of her words, made me pause. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely audible. She stood, her movements slow and deliberate, like she was carrying a burden too heavy to bear. There's a price for everything, she said, for life, for love, for power. My children, they understood that. They gave me their lives so I could carry on. My stomach churned. They didn't have a choice, I said, anger rising in my chest. They were just kids. She shook her head, her expression unreadable. You don't know what you're talking about, she said. You think this world is kind. You think it cares who lives and who dies? The spirits don't care. They take what they want. And if you're not strong enough, you're nothing but a feast for them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Spirits, curses? It sounded like the stories my grandmother used to tell, the ones that made me hide under my blanket at night. But standing there, in that house that smelled of death and despair, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was truth to her words. You'll see, she said again, her voice softer now. One day, when the spirits come for you, you'll understand why I did what I did. I didn't want to understand. I just wanted to get out of there. But as I turned to leave, my eyes caught something on the wall, a row of small hand-carved masks. Each one was different, but they all had the same hollow, empty eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized what they were. They're watching, Mama Ebele said, her voice barely above a whisper. They see everything and they never forget. I didn't stay to hear more. I ran out of that house as fast as my legs could carry me, the sound of her voice echoing in my ears. The air outside felt heavy, suffocating, like I was carrying a piece of her darkness with me. But I didn't stop running until I reached my home. The next morning, the village felt different, like the air had thickened and the light of the sun wasn't as bright. People went about their routines, but there was a heaviness in their movements, an uneasiness they couldn't shake. I didn't speak of what I'd seen in Mama Abel's house. Who would believe me? But it stayed with me, haunting my thoughts like a shadow I couldn't escape. That day, I overheard two women talking near the well. Their voices were low, cautious, but their words gripped me. You heard about Mama Ebele? One of them asked, her hand tightening on the rope she was using to draw water. The other woman nodded, her eyes darting around as if she feared someone might be listening. I heard she lost all her children, all of them, one after the other. It's not natural, the first woman said, shaking her head. 4 children, gone like that? People are saying it's the spirits.